Welcome on into GoldSheet TV Week 9 hot takes / reactions. We had a nice, exciting week of NFL football just go on, and today is trade deadline day. So Newbie and I will be monitoring Twitter throughout the episode to see if any news breaks. Before we get into some hot takes and some topics from this past week, we'll remind everybody that tomorrow, Wednesday, November 1st, the GoldSheet is free for anyone to view throughout the rest of this week. So those details will be on goldsheet.com and on wagertalk.com. But for some customer appreciation, the GoldSheet is free. That includes up to 12 premium plays in college football and NFL for week 9 and week 10, respectively. So make sure you head on over to goldsheet.com to get involved with the free trial of the GoldSheet for this week. Amazing product, amazing tools, and we look forward to getting some new eyeballs on that. But enough with the promos, Newbie. Let's talk some NFL football. How was your week 8? Because we actually had a great one at the GoldSheet side.
Yeah, had a great one at the GoldSheet site, had a great one here on the show as well. We talked about how we were going to be a little bit more selective this past week just because nothing screamed out to us. And it ended up paying dividends. I know we had some consternation in the comments below the video, which we always love when you and I were saying, hey, this Carolina spot is just a beautiful buy low potential for Carolina as they were taking on Houston. They end up winning outright, so you can leave the points at the door. A terrific handicap by you and I on that game. So sometimes when you see it that nice, you almost just want to, mail it in and just be like, all right, I'm not betting again this year. I'm not going to handicap a game as good as that one. One game that the handicap wasn't great and the game wasn't looking great ended up being a winner for me, and it was the Giants snatching defeat from the claws of victory against the New York Jets. You and I talking like we do often on Sunday, and we were both like, how the hell were the Jets favored in this game? And it was late in the game. It was already after, the ball was turned back over. Zach Wilson makes, a horrible, attempt there at the end to try and pick up a first down. The offensive line looked terrible. And then some way, somehow, I almost blacked out. And then I woke up and I was like, the Jets won this game somehow. They end up covering the 2.5. We also suggested, hey, if you can play the money line, if it was 3, you end up pushing your bet. So sorry on that one. But terrific week, man. Absolutely great when you see it so well. And hopefully that continues. Hopefully that just means the data that we've learned and the way that we've been looking at this game, the process is starting to play itself out. Because I think you too had yourself a pretty damn good weekend.
Yeah, week 8 last year was kind of the catalyst of a really great season that I had, and this was a great week for the GoldSheet team. Newsletter picks went 3-1-1. WagerTalk picks went 8-5, but that was a 7.52 unit win with a 35% ROI. Always throw some long shot bets in there as well. So winning percentage, never the most important thing when it comes to a handicapper. Always return on investment in units. And on the show, we gave out some actionable winners. We cashed some props with Jamar Chase. We missed that Breece Hall prop, but if you ride it with Newbie and you did what Newbie would do as the sharp better he is and get the Jets at 2.5, you got a winner there. You took the Giants with me. You got a 3 push, or you got the teaser leg that I recommended highly. That was an easy win there. But then, of course, the Vikings, if you rode there, as well as the Carolina Panthers, which was just really a great game. And it was nice to not really sweat this weekend, Newbie. These games were close all around, but it wasn't like a situation where I'm on the edge of my seat kind of hoping Derek Carr makes a play like I was a couple weeks ago. I was sitting there like, I'm feeling good. I felt good all day.
Yeah, and I think the one game, thankfully, we didn't see that 3 pop up in the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals game, because that would have led me to a loser on that one. Really the thing for me was we were talking all about how Purdy wasn't going to play. That was the news that was available on Thursday late in the week. He ends up playing in the game. I honestly think they probably should have rested him. He did not look right. He continues to struggle. And I think, that does have something to do with maybe the head injury that he's had, because some of those throws you were thinking like, man, that did not look like the Purdy that we had seen. So I don't think that Darnold would have hurt their chances at all. But I think we're going to get into, how we're looking at these teams moving forward now that we have data. How does some of these injuries that happened over the past weekend, how does that extrapolate and move forward? One team that you have to have upgraded in your power rankings is the Cincinnati Bengals, man. I mean, now that Joe Burrow has his obligatory horrible start to the year that it seems like we see every single year with this guy, that team is rolling. They dismantled the 49ers. And honestly, that score didn't even indicate how dominant of a win that was, in my opinion. So glad that I stayed off of that one, but I'm with you. It was nice to have some rocking chair winners for sure.
Yeah, so we will get into that Bengals game a little bit later on the show. And that's also another great segue from Newbie into what we're going to be discussing right now. And that is the injuries across the NFL and how to adjust your power ratings and consider handicapping these games moving forward, because I'm obviously going to forget some right now because I'm going off the top of my head. But obviously, you have Kirk Cousins down now. You don't know if Kenny Pickett's going to play. You don't know if Matthew Stafford's going to play. You a plethora of injuries. You have even defensive players. Grady Jarrett for the Falcons, he's out. Like, don't have a list in front of me, but we've witnessed so many injuries across the league, all positions this past weekend. Unfortunately, the nature of the sport, it seemed like there was like a crazy amount of injuries. Even just watching that game on Monday night, it just seemed like there were players going down. Like every third play, somebody was getting banged up.
Yep.
Hate to see it. Unfortunately, the nature of the game. But Newbie, couple questions for you. I want to hear from you first. For starters, how are some of these injuries going to affect your handicapping? Of course, you're going to have to stay on top of the Ian Rappaport's and Adam Schefter tweets to make sure you're getting the right information. And how are you adjusting your power ratings? Like, are you more of a team-based rating guy? Or obviously a quarterback is something you have to handicap immediately, but like a Grady Jarrett, for example, like how are you incorporating that injury into your power ratings? Is that like something that while you know he's good, it's not influencing it heavily? Or, you know, that's a damn good player for a bad defensive line. Like that's really going to sting. I want to hear your thoughts.
No, I think it becomes when you're talking about defensive players that go down or even skill players that go down, offensive line, especially that goes down, it then becomes a matchup based thing for me. I'm not across the board downgrading a team a point, even a half a point for a defensive player, or a role player. It's just not valuable enough to think that that's going to play itself into how these games are lined outside of some of mega stars and mega inputs on games. Like Myles Garrett goes down, that's going to affect how I handicap that entire defense, So I think it's a case by case basis. But for me, man, I mean, was the Halloween costumes that were on like Game of Thrones costumes, because it was like the red wedding with all the players that continued to go down last week. And you mentioned some of them. The most notable is Kirk Cousins. And just on a fan side of things, as a football fan, what a shame for a guy who, doesn't miss games. He doesn't miss snaps. He's missed one game essentially in his career, and it was due to, a COVID test back when that was all happening. So, I really feel for him and how it affects the Vikings. Not only is he down, don't forget they're missing Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison also gets injured as well, who he was, primed as a really breakout receiver for this team. So not only are they going to have to turn the ball over to Jaron Hall, who are they going to be moving the ball down to? I think this ratchets up maybe some potential plays on TJ Hawkinson. He's already kind of overvalued in the prop marketplace, but I think the way that I look at it as far as handicapping goes is who fills the role. And I'm not just talking about what backup quarterback comes in. How does that change how an offense is maybe going to use it? If you're looking at Los Angeles Rams, for instance, they're going to hope that they're able to pound the rock a little bit more with Darrell Henderson. They wish that they had Kyron Williams back. That would make them feel a lot better about, running the ball. But how does that affect Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, how they move the ball downfield there? With the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mitch Trubisky, it's I don't think that's as huge of a drop off when you're talking about a potential difference between Trubisky and how Pickett has played this season. So it has to be case by case for me. I think the only time that you're really downgrading is a case like Kirk Cousins. That's a massive downgrade to the backup quarterback from Kirk Cousins. Some of these other players, not so much. Matt Stafford goes off. That's a massive downgrade for sure. Desmond Ridder to Taylor Heineke, I don't know if that's moving the needle all that much for me. So it's hard to put a blanket statement on how it goes for all of these teams, but you have to monitor it. And again, it goes back to when we're recording our pick show on Thursday, we're told Brock Purdy's not going to be playing. This guy's going to be out. Like, this is such a fluid situation that's why, yes, you want to beat the closing line. Yes, you want to make sure that you're on the right side of line moves. However, you also don't want to be making huge plays with some of these teams that have major injury question marks, because your handicap come Sunday morning might be null and void. So if you do have those, you put a little post-it note up or you put a little pin in it. Maybe you make a smaller play. You don't take yourself completely off the side, but have the caveat that what your handicap is based on may be null and void come Sunday. So it's just a fluid situation you have to make sure you stay on top of, or you're going to end up getting burned.
Yeah, you're absolutely preaching right now, newbie. Like this season, and probably just recency bias because I don't have any numbers directly in front of me, but it just felt like so far this season, and we've discussed ad nauseum, that betting very, very early in the week and getting some really good numbers in closing line value hasn't even mattered that much. I'm definitely not out here saying closing line value does not matter or anything like that, but it does seem now that, at least in this information age, we know it only gets more and more competitive, that letting the market mature a little bit more and getting a little bit better information is better than hoping to completely beat information news, because you're going to end up on you're either going to get the wrong information, and you can't wait for perfect information because then you're going to miss the move in the first place. But you should probably get a little bit more mature information before kind of throwing out some bets. Like if you're betting the Falcons now automatically just because Kirk Cousins is hurt and now they're a home team and they're hosting a Vikings team, like I think you're a little bit crazy. That doesn't mean that the Falcons can't come out and win by 21 points with Ritter or Heineke under center. But every situation we've seen so far, and this last week's Falcons game was a great indication with against Will Levis and the Titans, especially when it's an unknown commodity. Unless you had to connect at that person's college who told you how that person played every single day, and you have a real up-to-date information about how this player performs and what they do, their habits, so on and so forth, you don't know crap. So yes, you try to get that market move, and that's a huge part of it, of everything. But how can you be so confident that Will Levis sucks? Or how can you be so confident that this Hall kid from Minnesota is not good at football? You just can't unless you really know. And that's something that we talked about on Thursday's show when we were debating Brock Purdy versus Sam Darnold. Even somebody who's played NFL snaps, I just said, I do not know. So I want nothing to do with this game. Didn't end up mattering. But I think that's some really great points you made there, Newbie, because a lot of times we've seen that now the market is overvaluing or undervaluing backups. And we saw, like, again, I saw a lot of people that I respect hammering the Falcons last week. But then what happened? Money came out on the Titans. And what happened? The Titans won outright, and Will Levis looked like the best quarterback of all the rookies last week with some of those throws down the field. So you can't wait for perfect information. At the same time, you should not be pulling the trigger too early, especially with the deadline happening, because for all we know, in 20 minutes, something big could break. But really like the way you went into that, Newbie, because that was some really great. So now, before we go into a little bit more of another topic about the state of the league, wanted to let everybody know that next Tuesday, Newbie and I are trying to answer some of your questions. So we love the comments. Hit that like button, smash that like button, hit it gently, whatever floats your boat. But also make sure to leave some comments and questions, because we're going to try to dedicate at least some time to answer at least 1, 2, 3, 4 questions from you guys. So leave those below. But Newbie, I want to talk about these Cincinnati Bengals. What Joe Burrow did, that was one of the better quarterback games we've seen from any quarterback in recent memory, right? Is that a crazy statement? Like, it was awesome.
No, decision making was terrific. I think the really nice thing that we saw was I finally feel like that injury is starting to fall by the wayside for Joe Burrow, because his ability to pick his spots of when he was going to scramble to pick up huge first downs, he just wasn't doing that. He was a statue to start the season, and that finally has changed here a little bit, and he's picking spots very well. And the decision making was great. Finally getting Jamar Chase back involved, something that they struggled to do, week in and week out. Finally, having a run game to speak of as well. So many things that go hand in hand were finally coming together for a team that really didn't look like they knew which way was up to start the year. And I think that was because of limited action and all the injuries that stacked up for this team. And now they're a player, man, moving forward. Like, I don't think that was just a flash in the pan. Often when we're doing our pick show and we're breaking down some of these games, I talk about how sometimes I was more unimpressed with the team that lost the game than I was impressed with the team that won the game. Sure, I think there's some issues with the 49ers rattling off some straight losses. However, I think this game had a lot more to do with the coming out party or re-coming out party for the Cincinnati Bengals, saying, hey, we're here. We struggled out of the gate. It's kind of what we do, as a matter of fact. And then we start picking up the pieces. We're going to learn a lot. And finally, we have a Sunday night football game that is a hell of
Oh
a
yeah.
matchup. The Buffalo Bills and the Bengals. So all the sins that we had to pay last week with the horrible primetime games that we had to endure, we're getting rewarded. Now, does this game finally go over? I'm not going to say that, but I think we have a intriguing matchup because this is the chance for the Bengals to prove, okay, now you're against an AFC foe. You're against a powerhouse in the AFC that's gone through their struggles as well during this midway point in the season. So this is a big show me game for both of them. Was it just a flash in the pan for the Bengals, or can they go against a toe-to-toe Buffalo Bills team that figures to be able to move the ball on them? They match up well schematically. Both teams do. So I'm excited about the Bengals moving forward. I don't know which way quite I'm going to bet this game yet. I want to see a little bit more line move. I also want to see some injury report talks for both of these teams as far as the Buffalo Bills defense is concerned. But man, if you're not excited for this football game on Saturday night or on Sunday night, I don't know what to tell you, because I can't wait to see which of these teams comes out in prime time.
Yeah, I think something you said that you and I talk about ad nauseum. That was literally the theme of our show on Thursday. Our best bets, which we did absolutely amazing with, was you need to like buy low on teams and sell high on teams. The question for the Bengals really was coming into this, not coming into the season with the injuries with Burrow, but like this is now like the third straight year where they started off terribly, and obviously the injury for Burrow helped hurt things and made it even worse for them. And then they bounced back and did amazing. So, like, yeah, there is some merit to just simply say that the Bengals are a slow starting team and they're willing to overcome and they're capable of overcoming these problems. Like, that is a thing. Like, if it was only one season, it's the first time, maybe you'd have your doubts. But like I said again on Thursday, I faded the Bengals the last 2 years, thinking they're not that good. They can't be continuing up this streak. They're just, the market was also pointing in the other direction. But what they do? They won games, they covered spreads, and I lost money. So I am completely in on the Bengals. Like I said on the show on Thursday, I did not bet that game because I needed them to prove it to me. And all they did was show me that, yeah, this is the same exact type of team where while they're missing some of the talent on a name basis defensively, and they certainly could be active in the trade market to pick up a cornerback or a safety before the 4 p.m. deadline. But I'm just so impressed with what Joe Burrow did. If there was any
Yeah.
doubts that everything that was wrong with the offense was solely injury based, I think that those doubts are clear. They established a great run game. And I will say at this point, though, newbie, I am concerned about the 49ers. Concerned does not mean I don't think they're missing the playoffs and now they're
Yeah.
getting the first overall pick in the draft. But this is the second straight game where they were just beat up, like just beat. Like they lost the football game. Like obviously that Addison touchdown maybe changed some things on that Monday night football game. But the Minnesota Vikings came into that stadium and they or hosted the Niners and beat them. The Cincinnati Bengals came into their house and they beat them. So what's your concern level here? Because again, I'm not saying the Niners are dropping out of the playoff race or anything all of a sudden. They're still a powerhouse in the NFC, but by no means are these two losses fluky or so sort? Like there are some concerns for the Niners, no?
Absolutely. And I think you're starting to see, and I talked about this on my Twitter at Newbie Talks. I feel like so much of the market value with San Francisco ended up just being ironclad, tied into that absolute dismantling of the Cowboys on prime time, because that was the thing that all public bettors remembered. That was the thing that said, that was really when the market just exploded. This is the Super Bowl favorite. This is the juggernaut. Just count off the NFC playoffs because the 49ers are winning it. It was when they absolutely dismantled the Cowboys. And I don't think that you can discount that, but I also think it was a perfect spot, a perfect storm for them where Dallas was a little bit too up for that game. Because if you look at the summation of the year for the 49ers, I just think that they were never really that juggernaut that was promised. Again, not to say that they're not a top flight team in the NFC. They're absolutely one of the top three teams. However, you can't discount 3 straight losses, one to PJ Walker, one to Kirk Cousins in prime time, and now one to a Bengals team that really didn't know which way was up until this kind of coming out game. So the bye week couldn't be coming at a more perfect time for this 49ers team. They get to step away, they get to, recenter their chi a little bit, and then come out against a Jacksonville Jaguars team that off a bye, you have to think that the 49ers are going to be able to put a plan together to be able to move the ball against that defense, to be able to stifle a little bit of what Trevor Lawrence is doing, who's looking terrific this year. But I'm not writing them off, but I definitely think the concerns are real. 3 straight losses in this league is a real thing, especially when you start off 5-0. Everybody's already crowning you the Super Bowl champion. I don't think it's all a Brock Purdy issue. Don't get me wrong. I think some of the injuries have played itself out. And you talk about players that are valuable to the point spread. You can't say that Deebo Samuel doesn't mean more than a typical wide receiver to this team, because the offense looks a little bit more listless without him in there. And when you think about the dynamic playmakers they have, you wouldn't think that one player can make that much of a difference. But I think they really are. And I think finally getting healthy, getting Brock Purdy another week to, get healthy from that concussion that, again, I don't think he should have came back too early. I think they should have just went with Sam Darnold. You probably end up with the same result regardless. It'll be interesting to me. I'm not putting the gavel down on this team, but if they come out flat in this bye and drop a game to the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's a very winnable game on the road. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk spot. That might be when I start hitting the panic button for this team, because they have a tough schedule the rest of the way. You look at a Buccaneers, you look at a Cardinals. Outside of that, you have some very tough football games the rest of the way.
Yeah, definitely no panic buttons, but we did learn a couple things. One, we learned that the offense without Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams has issues. And we also learned that Brock Purdy going on the road in a windy, bad weather condition environment is not conducive to him. And obviously, there's a lot of quarterbacks you could say that for. And that's part of the reasons why a Jared Goff of the world couldn't get over the hump. Reasons why the Kirk Cousins of the world have never gotten over that hump is because that they have had these issues in cold, bad weather, not being able to do that. Then you have, on the other hand, you got guys like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, that you saw that playoff game they played last year that's snowing all over the place, didn't matter to them. So just something to notice. Again, nobody is saying the 49ers aren't making the playoffs, so they should start selling people at the deadline. That's absolutely not the point we're making. We are just saying that this team is absolutely not indestructible by any means. And there is a contention, and the Seattle Seahawks are legitimate, if you ask me. And we'll learn a lot about them this week as they play the Baltimore Ravens, and that's something we can definitely discuss on Thursday. But Thursday Night Football, I'm not even going to say, I guess this is a decent matchup. If you like ugly, good football in terms of coaching, I'm not going to get there and say, I'll say it'd probably be better than the Lions and the Raiders game I was sitting there wanting to tear my eyes out last night. But they go to the side. Titans at Steelers. Will Levis comes into the game on Sunday. Nobody knows what to expect. Everybody's betting against him. And he throws 4 touchdowns, 3 of them of 30-plus yards down the field. Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel. I know they're familiar with Arthur Smith because he was the OC of Tennessee before taking the job in Atlanta. And Mike Vrabel had another Mike Vrabel special where everybody was down him and his team. They traded Kevin Byard. His team sucks. How is Will Levis going to move the football with no weapons in the offensive line? And he throws more touchdowns than Ryan Tannehill has done in all season in one showing. Other side, Pittsburgh Steelers. Kenny Pickett gets hit hard, gets hurt. Do not know his stats at the time right now. Do not know who will be him or Trubisky. I don't think overall it's a big downgrade from Pickett to Trubisky. However, Trubisky was not ready to play in that football game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was brought in for relief. That killed the teaser we had going on at GoldSheet. But I have a take on a prop here. But first things first, newbie, I just don't know how you don't just kind of tease the Titans here and think about it this way, because this should be a close game in my opinion. But how are you doing this one? Because I have a couple of angles I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. If I was betting this, I would definitely, look to take the points with Tennessee. I would also look to tease them up. I think that's a no-brainer. Just sitting at the total, it's ticked down here. You're seeing 36s, 36.5s. Gross. Yeah. This would be the matchup with these two offenses that ends up going over in prime time. Let's be honest. I'm not going to bet that though. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, until you know who's playing quarterback for either side, I would expect it to be Levis here for Tennessee.
I
But
think it
I
is.
don't think that you can bet this game without knowing who's going to be playing quarterbacks. Maybe you get some props in there, or maybe for what it's worth, you do grab that teaser now and take Tennessee up to 9. I know it's not your typical, but there are some 2.5s out there. So I do think if you want to bet this game, you grab Tennessee now because there's two notable offshores that are already sitting at 2.5. Chris Andrews over at the South Point, he's already hanging 2.5. So if you want Tennessee, you grab them now. If you want to tease them, you tease them now. But I don't think you're going to see much more movement around 2.5, 3. But if you do want that 3, you grab it now because I think regardless what happens, the money, the sharps, the sharp bet in this game is going to be on Tennessee. I'm not interested in laying points with Pittsburgh right now. If this was a home dog situation, we'd be talking about something a little bit different. If I could tease Pittsburgh up, we'd be talking a little something different. It's Tennessee or pass for me in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just not a game where I'm really looking at the sides here. Just a tidbit to put out there. Mike Tomlin, since the year 2000, 11, 4-1 straight up against rookie quarterbacks. One of those losses came this season against CJ Stroud on the road, but that was a very different situation. Short week's always different. I haven't pulled any primetime numbers, but one thing we learned about Will Levis is that he'll sling the football down the field. That was never the problem. In college, everyone loved his arm. All the sky reports, you go back and read them, they'll all say fantastic arm, fantastic arm, fantastic arm. Bad decisions and inaccuracies were his big points of reason why he fell in the draft was because of his decision making accuracy. It never had anything to do with his ability to sling the football. We saw it on full display. I don't know if the Atlanta Falcons just did not know what to expect or what was good with that, but the way that there was receivers running wide open down the field, somebody messed up somewhere. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive metrics this season, and they're doing a relatively good job of shutting down wide receiver ones, but wide receiver twos are getting to the Steelers, and deep balls are also getting to the Steelers as well. And they already announced Pittsburgh that Minkah Fitzpatrick will not be participating in this football game, which is obviously a huge deal, one of the better safeties in the National Football League. So I am targeting Treylon Burks over 25.5 receiving yards. Haven't locked in just yet because I want to do a last-minute deep dive into that, but that's where my thought is. The reason being is he has not been healthy a lot this season or even last season, but he led the team in deep targets last year for the Tennessee Titans. If he gets the same snap share he should be getting because he is finally healthy, he's been dealing with injuries, then he is their deep threat and he is their wide receiver 2 to the Nuke Hopkins wide receiver 1. So in a game that is expected to be ugly with a low total does not mean that Will Levis will not have the opportunity to at least throw 1 or 2 deep passes. And we're also talking about 25 yards. So ample opportunity for Treylon Burks to get there. Quoting back that the Pittsburgh Steelers are 25th in DVOA against wide receiver 2s, and they are 23rd in deep passing DVOA. Both of those things are what Burks excelled at last season, was getting down the field. Didn't see it this year because he hasn't been on the field, but that is my first thought. Any beef with that, newbie, or you're like where my head's at?
No, I really like that quite a bit. And simply because it's a nice strategy that I like utilizing as well is trying to find the guy behind the guy to make the bet on. Everybody wants to make the bet on DeAndre Hopkins. Everybody wants to make the bet on the number 1 player. And it's a lot easier to look up stats at that and, make the case for that. Well, this is a guy that I know. For me, I just go back to something that I did last night. And it was everybody was talking about Michael Mayer, the tight end for the Raiders.
Yeah.
Really great position for him. Really great play for him. Everybody was betting his over. The thing gets steamed up. And I'm like, why aren't we looking at Austin Hooper? Austin Hooper, the tight end, ends up being the second leading receiver for a team who only ended up with 120-some passing yards. So I like that quite a bit. I'm going to add it to my card. I always like looking at the secondary guys. You get better numbers on that because it's not a heavily as bet prop. And also just a little word of caution. When you start seeing your timeline, every single person on the same prop, I'm not saying it's going to lose, but we got a lot of copycats out there. So it's nice going off the board a little bit. Treylon Burks, probably not many people handicapping that one. Good find there. I'm arrived on that one with you.
Yeah, and this is a good situation because last week we gave out Dalton Kincaid at 33.5, and that closed at 40.5. or even maybe even higher than 4. I think it was 40.5. And another thing, Newbie and I, we talked about this a couple of times, but like when you do your handicapping, like, kind of ignore the noise. Like, don't be listening
Hmm.
to other Twitter cappers and whatnot. But at the same time, and this holds true, and it might sound a little contradictory, but when everybody in the world or everyone you're seeing is betting a prop or something, and it doesn't move, read between the lines there, right? Laporta
Yeah.
was the prop I was on last night. That bet kept going up. Okay, it made sense. Going back to Kincaid last week, we got in early. Then the news that Knox broke out, which brought the line up a little bit. Okay. Then, the public got in and went back down a little bit. And then guess what? It rose again, meaning it was getting some steam. Mayer was a prop that I saw. Every single tweet I saw was on Michael Mayer. I kept looking at my screen to see where that prop went. Didn't take an inch. Not saying it's a strategy as good as that because the prop market is very inefficient. But on a prime time matchup like that,
Yeah.
110% something to consider. So hopefully you guys can
Spot
use
up.
that in your handicapping arsenal because there are things that you don't even need to handicap from yourself where you could just kind of read the tea leaves and could hopefully get you to a profitable ticket. But that is going to wrap it up for Newbie and I today. We'll be back on Thursday talking week 9. Best bets, get around 4 to 6 games there. And let us know in the comments below. Leave us some comments of some questions, whether it be what's Newbie's favorite thing to eat for dinner, or to me, how do you like handicapping the football game? We'll discuss anything in the comments below. We want to hear from you and be a little more interactive. Hit that like button. We're getting tons of views, and we would love and appreciate every single viewer. But the likes are the easiest way to support us, and the free winners we're giving out to you guys. Um, for myself at Slime Action on Twitter, you can follow me there. And for Newbie at Newbie Talks on Twitter. We appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys on Thursday.